this is something I've discussed with other neurodivergent people, is that I think especially as neurodivergent women, is that we've so much more emotions, I feel like, than the average
Mm-hmm.
woman, because it's like we've got the emotional intensity that goes up and down, but because we're socialized to be, it's fine, everything's okay, I've
Yeah.
gotten taken care of, that like I know that for me, like I have such a hard time showing that I'm upset.
Yeah.
It's like I really can't. I feel like for me, I don't even know how to express being upset unless I'm in total meltdown, and that's
Mm-hmm.
rare.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like, if someone does something really hurtful or like I'm really sad, I can't. I don't even know how to like cry in front of them or like be angry,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to write it. And I think for me
Yeah.
also, art is the only acceptable way in my life I've found to express emotion, because I feel like as a woman and neurodivergent people, like as a neurodivergent person, like if I do have emotion, it doesn't come out in a way that either someone that's neurotypical understands, and they're like, "Oh, I'm really like it's hard because they may not for them it may not be upsetting." Or like, when you're overwhelmed
Yeah.
with sensory some stimulation and people are like, "What are you talking about? Like this is fine." And you're like, "Oh, inside it I feel like I'm dying." So I feel like also art has been the only way to express
Mm.
emotions, and I've been working with my ADHD coach on like how can I healthy in a healthy way express in front of people sadness or anger, because like if it comes out, which is rare, it's like a meltdown. And I feel like a lot of that comes from like having to mask
Holding
and
it in.
suppress
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really like the fact that you find. I think it lays in the fact that we can sort of distance ourselves from our art, and it's easier to share our art with other people than our like direct emotions. And I wouldn't consider it as bad in any way, because it's just another tool for us, and art can be another tools for neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
So I even think that people who are not artists, like per se, or they can use it actually to deal, like, even sort of simple thing as journaling
Yeah.
or doodling or just coloring this mandalas or something. It can be freeing in a way. So yeah, there are art therapies and stuff like that, and they are for everyone.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, if you took away my ability to write or do any creative writing or paint, like you would be taking away my voice in a way,
Mhm.
because like it's the only, and this could be true because yeah, I feel like in this, when you look at social media a lot of the time, like we have like, yeah, that toxic positivity culture where it's like not okay to be sad or to be going through a hard time or to be angry. And like art's the only, maybe more now, because it's like we've got this toxic positivity culture when social media is like, I think the upcoming generation's like the most depressed generation. And it's funny, you think we'd be more connected than ever, but like on social media, we're so encouraged to only show, there's like, I got rid of my social media and now I'm slowly going back on it for business reasons. But yeah, because I felt like, who is this person? I'm like, I created this very
Persona.
persona. And I was like, now I'm more honest. Like, now I'm like, yeah, I have ADHD autism. Like, I feel like more honest with my social media. But back then I was like, it depressed me to be like, I don't even know who this person is that like I am.
Yeah, it was like you were only allowing some parts of yourself to be shown, and I understand it. Like whenever I'm posting a lot on social media, especially Facebook, and whenever I post something which is more personal and which is more less positive, except poetry, because with poetry I feel free. I can share
Yeah, it
whatever.
feels freer with art. You're like it feels art feels like freer in a way because it's so
Yeah.
hard to like say it directly.
Yeah. But when I say it directly, I have this feeling of like, ah, I overshared, even though I wasn't sharing like my life story or something, or I said something from my life just to help others or to share some information that is necessary for my friends to know. But yeah, I feel like, okay, you out of the rules here, and everyone will judge you for the fact that you shared your true self. And that's also very important because, you know, you're the first person right now with whom I talk about it. And people, as you said, people tend to filter the positive stuff only. And especially in social media, because maybe in close relationships, it can be different. But yeah, that's so important to know that you're not bad, or especially my thing is with ADHD and autism, I feel like I tend to overshare. Not necessarily in social media. Social media is more like dopamine hit for me. But when you realize that it's not wrong to do that, and you can do it if you take care of yourself and protect
Yeah.
yourself, and you come back to your, okay, maybe I overshared, but it's not the end of the world, even if somebody judges me, then it helps you be empowered and just go on without rumination.
Yeah, I think that's hard because and that's something I've been really working a lot is vulnerability because yeah, it's like it keeps you from having real relationships if you can't be vulnerable. But for me, it's like such a hard thing to unbrick. You're like, oh, I don't want to overshare. And then when I think about it, I'm like, whenever anyone shared with me something vulnerable, like I'm glad that they told me. And
Yeah.
like, I feel more connected with them. But for me, it's like, when I do it, I'm like, oh, it's like the worst sin. And I'm like, that's really keeping
Mm,
us, because yeah, it's like, I think it's good to be able to share it through art, but it's like
yeah.
moving beyond art into like the real world and like being able to share. I remember with my friend, I had a really bad week at work and I was like a mess. And I like apologized so many times to my friends and I'm like, I'm so sorry that like I was such a wreck. And they're like, yeah, we didn't mind that at all. Like, we're glad we could be there for you. And like I thought about it, I was like, yeah, if they were in that situation, I
You would
wouldn't
do
have
the same.
I wouldn't have minded, but like, yeah, I beat myself up over it so much.
Yeah. uh Elise, what we sort of talked about strategies already, so I wanted to ask you, what would you like, what is your message to neurodivergent artists that you would like to convey, like from your vulnerable self?
And I feel like from my vulnerable self, I would say if you are a neurodivergent artist, that there are going to be a lot of negative voices in your head telling you that your work doesn't mean anything and that no one cares.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
Yeah.
And that your work is really important. Even if if it's not financially viable, it is, I think, as we talked about earlier, it's such a way of expressing ourselves in a way that unfortunately we're not allowed to in society, or we've really been conditioned not to. And I know that when I've been like, art's not financially viable, it did feel like cutting off a piece of myself and
Yeah.
like cutting off an important piece of communication. So I would be like, and in the worst, most hopeless periods of my life where I'm like, oh, I can't see any bright at all, art got me out of it. And it was the only thing that really, it was one of the main things it did. when like really very few other things could reach me. It's the only thing that I can communicate with myself with is also and pull myself out of that place. So it's such a tool, and to not like stop doing it.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that. I feel like so inspired every time I talk to you. It's so important that what you said, and I agree with that 100%. Like, don't believe the negative voices in your head. They are not your voices. It's not you. It's what society made you think. It's maybe your tendency to ruminate, but the real you is in your art and in what you really deeply feel when you're vulnerable. I really like this word. I think, yeah, it's very famous word now because of
Art
Brené
is so
Brown.
vulnerable. It's
Yeah.
for me, it's like when I do art or painting, I'm like, that is a raw piece of my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's unfiltered, because I feel like with art, I don't know, with art, it's like when you're doing poetry or like paint, it's so much harder to mask it. And it's just like, yeah, it's like if I give someone a piece of my art or my work, I'm like, that is me. That's like the unmasked version of me that I'm showing or giving to someone.
Yeah. Is there anything you would like to ask or say before we finish?
For you, what is your kind of message of hope for the other neurodivergent artists out there?
I 100% I agree with you fully with what you said, and I think it's the most important thing, to be honest. But also, I would like to say that whatever you do, however you create it, whatever skills you have, if you like doing it, then do it. And it doesn't have to be Leonardo da Vinci or Van Gogh. It's you, and that's crucial. And that's such a revolutionary thing, to stand by your side when you're neurodivergent. And when you stand by your art, it's an act of self-love. And I think that's what we really need. Like, all the people, of course, but what we are talking about neurodivergent artists, and I think that's really crucial for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And yeah, it's a way of self-love doing your art, because you're communicating with yourself when you're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Elyse.
Thank you as well. Always a great conversation. And it's nice to connect with another neurodivergent artist, because understanding, it can be very hard to navigate the world, and like art is such a tool for us. And
Yeah.
it would be like cutting off my arm, or like taking my voice away, because it's so important in how I express myself, and I think how we all express ourselves.